There comes a moment in every person's life when they are faced with a simple but brutal choice: remain trapped in the same cycle for years to come, or step forward into a new version of themselves and never look back. Right now, as you read these words, you are standing at that crossroad. The path you choose will either set you free or chain you to the same frustrations you've been carrying for far too long. 3 days ago, I observed something that reminded me how many men are still stuck in a prison of their own making. I saw a man spend 20 agonizing minutes trying to justify himself to someone who clearly had no respect for him. He poured out his energy, explaining, rationalizing, begging silently for approval from a person who wasn't worthy of his presence in the first place. And sadly, I see this all the time. Maybe you recognize yourself in that moment. Maybe you've been the one trying to prove yourself to someone who doesn't deserve you. Maybe you're tired of being the invisible man in the room, the one others overlook, underestimate, or dismiss without a second thought. If that resonates, hear me clearly. You were not born insecure. You were not born apologetic. You were not born timid. You were taught to be that way. Layer by layer, authority figures, parents, teachers, and society itself conditioned you to be compliant, agreeable, and easy to control. They wanted you manageable, predictable, and harmless. But greatness is never born in men who live to be manageable. Empires are not built by those who bend at every demand. What you call a lack of confidence is really the result of conditioning designed to keep you small. But the truth is, you were never meant to be small. Centuries ago, a man named Niccolò Machiavelli uncovered the raw principles of influence and dominance, not the polite rules society feeds the masses, but the unvarnished realities of what makes people powerful, influential, and untouchable. He left behind a blueprint that still echoes today, a guide for anyone ready to rise above the herd. What I am about to share with you is not about becoming arrogant or cruel. It is about becoming unshakable. Imagine walking into any space and instantly commanding attention without saying a word. Imagine speaking once and watching people lean in, hanging on every syllable. Imagine setting boundaries so firmly that no one dares to test them twice. That is what it means to become unstoppable. But let me warn you, once you see what I'm about to reveal, you will never be able to unsee it. Once you understand how influence truly operates, you cannot go back to the naivety of seeking approval or making excuses. Once you begin this transformation, there is no return to the version of yourself who begged for scraps of respect. You will never again accept crumbs when you were meant to feast at the head table. So, let me ask you, are you prepared to become unstoppable? The very first principle is this: transform the man inside of you. Every one of us carries two selves within us. The first is insecure, hesitant, apologetic, and desperate for approval. This self makes you say sorry when no apology is required. It makes you explain yourself to people who have no right to an explanation. It whispers, "Don't upset anyone," even when someone is trampling over your boundaries. This self was created by your upbringing and molded by a society that wanted you obedient, not powerful. The second self, however, is entirely different. He is decisive. He is assured. He speaks with authority. He doesn't beg for respect. He commands it. Every choice you make in your daily life is either feeding the weak self or strengthening the powerful one. Every time you put someone else's comfort above your dignity, you feed the weak self. Every time you let a disrespect slide without consequence, you starve the confident self. But every moment is an opportunity to choose differently. This is not about becoming cruel or abrasive. It's about finally understanding that being excessively nice to people who trample over you is not kindness. It's betrayal of yourself. When you allow others to cross your lines without consequence, you send them a message: my boundaries don't matter, and the world will believe you. Machiavelli once wrote, "He who cannot govern himself must serve another." Let that sink in. If you do not master your inner self, you will forever be mastered by others. The shift begins when you learn to hear the difference between the voices of your two selves. The weak self says, "Maybe I misunderstood them. The strong self says, "No, I understood perfectly, and I will not tolerate it." The weak self says, "I should give them another chance." The strong self says, "They already had their chance, and they wasted it." The weak self says, "I don't want to hurt their feelings." The strong self says, "I refuse to compromise my standards." This transformation does not happen overnight, and it is not achieved through aggression. It is achieved through deliberate choice. Every day you decide which self to starve and which self to feed. At first, the weak self will resist. It will remind you of the disapproval you might face. It will whisper that people won't like the new you. It will bring up your past failures and try to convince you that change is impossible. But your only task is to outlast it. Let it complain. Let it protest. But keep feeding the strong self until it becomes your dominant nature. On the other side of this transformation is the man who never apologizes for existing, never explains himself to those who don't matter, and never chases respect because it is already granted to him. The second principle is this: forge an indestructible mind. Your mind is either your greatest fortress or your weakest chain. Most men live with mental chaos. Every insult cuts them to the core. Every obstacle feels like a personal attack. Every criticism rattles them. Their emotions yank them around like a wild horse. Anger drives them into rash decisions. Hurt makes them retreat into weakness. Fear convinces them to freeze and make no decision at all. But the man with a fortress mind is untouchable. A fortress. Mind processes the world strategically, not emotionally. When someone insults him, he doesn't feel wounded. He learns something about the other person's character. When someone betrays him, he isn't devastated. He simply confirms what he already suspected. When fear arises, he interprets it as a signal that growth is coming. Emotions are no longer chains. They become data points. Anger means a boundary has been crossed. Pain means someone has revealed their true nature. Fear means you are about to break into new territory. Understand this: other people's treatment of you says more about them than it does about you. When someone tries to manipulate you, they're showing you their desperation, not your weakness. When someone disrespects you, they're revealing their lack of honor, not your lack of worth. Machiavelli himself once observed that a wise man acts in the present to shape the future. This is the essence of a fortress mind: preparation, strategy, and resilience. You expect obstacles, so you're never blindsided. You anticipate betrayal, so you're never destroyed by it. With a fortress mind, every event becomes a lesson. Every conversation is a window into human nature. Every setback becomes a test of resilience. You begin to notice patterns. The man who lies once will lie again. The friend who gossips to you will gossip about you. The person who disrespected you when they thought they could get away with it will repeat the behavior if you allow it. Your job is to see the pattern early and act accordingly. And don't mistake this for becoming cold or emotionless. You still feel, but you no longer let feelings govern your destiny. Logic dictates your decisions. Strategy dictates your moves. Strength dictates your influence. While most men crumble under pressure, you become unshakable, a fortress that no storm can touch. The third principle is this: master the weapon of silence. Insecure men broadcast their insecurity through noise. They argue to prove themselves. They explain endlessly to seek validation. They fill every silence because the quiet terrifies them. But the man who has mastered himself uses silence as his greatest display of confidence. When you stop explaining yourself, people begin to see you differently. They sense depth. They feel your authority. They instinctively respect you more. Think about the most powerful leaders you've ever seen. Do they constantly justify every move? Do they argue with everyone who questions them? No. They set the tone, they make decisions, and they move forward without asking permission. Silence is not weakness. Silence is leverage. Machiavelli himself compared true influence to a lion's quiet dominance. Its presence alone demands respect. When you become comfortable with silence, you rob manipulators of their favorite tool. If someone accuses you falsely, resist the urge to defend yourself. Simply observe them. If someone pressures you for explanations you don't want to give, answer with a simple no and nothing more. If someone tries to bait you into drama, refuse to engage. Watch how quickly they lose their power when they cannot provoke you. Here's the truth: people fear what they cannot read. When you are silent, they begin to project their own assumptions onto you. They imagine you know more than you reveal. They suspect you're more strategic than you may even be. And this perception alone gives you influence you didn't have to fight for. Silence, however, only works if your words, when you choose to use them, carry weight. Because you don't waste words, every sentence matters. Because you don't talk endlessly, when you do speak, people listen as if your words are law. Silence protects you from reckless mistakes, too. How many men have sabotaged themselves by speaking in anger? How many opportunities have been destroyed by saying too much, too soon? Silence ensures you never destroy yourself with your own tongue. There is a strength most men never discover because they're too busy filling space with empty chatter. They talk to prove they're important, defend themselves endlessly, or argue over things that don't matter. But true influence rarely comes from noise. It comes from presence. Imagine being the man who doesn't need to compete with endless words, because his silence carries more weight than others shouting. That kind of man saves his energy for decisive action rather than wasting it explaining or debating. He is powerful not because he intimidates, but because people cannot predict him. When others don't know what you're thinking, they cannot calculate your next move. When they don't know when you'll act, they remain cautious, giving you respect you haven't even asked for. Let them speculate. Let them stay uneasy. Let them admire the depth they can't fully grasp. Your quietness is not emptiness. It's your sharpest weapon. Silence, when used intentionally, can turn into your loudest roar. The man who learns to wield silence no longer has to fight battles with his tongue, because the battlefield shifts in his favor before he even speaks. But silence is only one element of becoming unstoppable. The fourth principle is this: learn to convert every setback into raw strength. Too many men crumble when life deals them disappointment. A friend betrays them. A partner puts greed before loyalty. A family member chooses selfishness over connection. And suddenly they spiral into confusion, heartbreak, and paralysis. But here's the truth. Betrayal and disappointment are not exceptions in life. They are guarantees. People will always act in their own interest, and once you accept this, their failures no longer destroy you. Instead, they educate you. The reason most men are shattered by disappointment is because they expected too much from others. They imagined people were more loyal, more dependable, or more noble than they actually are. They mistook politeness for character. They believed words over actions. And so, when reality arrives, they fall apart, replaying old conversations, searching for the signs they missed, blaming themselves for being blind. But the man who is prepared does not collapse under these moments. He grows sharper. Every setback contains valuable intelligence. It reveals who people are when pressure is applied. It unmasks their hidden nature. It shows you exactly who should never be trusted again. In this way, disappointment is actually a gift. Before, you may have been unclear about someone's loyalty. Afterward, you see them with perfect clarity. Machiavelli observed that men are naturally fickle, self-interested, and quick to change when circumstances shift. If you understand this from the beginning, you will never be blindsided. You will build alliances carefully, keep contingencies ready, and never place your destiny in another man's hands. But here's the deeper secret. Disappointment only comes to those who are climbing higher. Think about it. People don't betray those who have nothing to offer. They betray those who are moving upward, those who have something others want, those who are becoming valuable enough to envy. Every time you are disappointed, take it as evidence you are advancing. It is a signal that you're entering territory where loyalty becomes thin because you are now a man worth betraying. That's a badge of honor. So how should you respond? Not with rage, not with whining, but with strategy. Ask yourself, what lesson is this teaching me? How do I use this knowledge to fortify myself? Which weakness in my judgment has this moment exposed? Sometimes the right move is to cut someone off entirely, without drama, without long explanations. Just eliminate the influence and keep moving. Other times, the best choice is patience. Remember what they did, take notes, and wait for the right moment. When timing is perfect, their own unreliability will be used against them. Disappointment, then, is not your enemy. It is your education. It teaches you to distinguish between people who are assets and people who are liabilities. It forces you to strengthen yourself instead of leaning on others. The man who has endured repeated letdowns and still rises is 100 times more formidable than the man who has never been tested. If you learn to treat disappointment as training, you evolve from naive believer to calculating strategist. And when you can survive betrayal, abandonment, and dishonor, and still stand taller than before, you reach a point where you are truly untouchable. The fifth principle is one most men desperately need. Destroy your critics with excellence, not arguments. Here's what average men do when faced with criticism. They argue. They defend themselves. They desperately explain, trying to win over the very people who were never going to support them anyway. They burn up hours in endless debates that achieve nothing. But the powerful man knows that critics cannot be defeated with words. They can only be silenced by results. Every time you argue with a critic, you elevate them to your level. You're signaling that their opinion is worth engaging. But ask yourself, what qualifies them to judge you? Have they built anything of significance? Have they walked the path you're walking? If not, why would you dignify their commentary with a response? Excellence is the only real reply to criticism. Stop trying to convince people with talk. Instead, produce results so undeniable that their words collapse under the weight of your achievements. When you win consistently, gossip dies. When your success speaks loudly, doubt becomes absurd. Machiavelli wrote that fortune cannot be overcome by complaints. In the same way, criticism cannot be overcome by argument. It must be buried under proof of mastery. Complaints are smoke. Excellence is fire. Every second spent defending yourself is time stolen from building something stronger. Instead of wasting breath, channel that energy into growth, skill, and execution. Make your success the mirror that reflects their smallness. When people see you thrive despite their attacks, their criticism transforms into envy. And envy at its core is just disguised respect. Understand this. Critics will never vanish. There will always be people who misunderstand you, question you, or hope for your downfall. That's not a problem, it's part of the game. Use their doubt as fuel. Let their disbelief feed your determination. But never lower yourself into the mud of endless arguments. Excellence will do all the speaking you'll ever need. The sixth principle is one of the most overlooked. Shape your reputation deliberately. Within seconds of meeting you, people form judgments that will determine how they treat you. Most men allow this to happen by accident. But the wise man crafts his reputation with precision, knowing it is one of his greatest weapons. Reputation is not just about appearance, it's about energy. It's the aura people sense when you enter the room. It's the stories they share when you're not present. You must control this. Speak less, reveal less. When you're selective with your words, people assume depth. When you don't explain every move, they assume purpose. Mystery draws respect. Keep others curious. Never hand over your entire life story to strangers. Never reveal your full plans to competitors. Never expose your strategy to those who haven't proven loyalty. Your reputation should precede you. People should know your standards before they even test them. They should anticipate your boundaries before they cross them. They should respect your capacity long before you ever demonstrate it. Machiavelli warned that men judge more by appearances than by reality. Accept this and use it wisely. Walk, stand, and sit like someone who owns himself completely. Show composure when others panic. Be unshakable when the room is chaos. Consistency is everything. Be the same man under stress and under praise, in public and in private. When you end relationships, end them firmly. When you take a stand, stand immovable. When you make a point, deliver it so decisively that it cannot be ignored. But also let your actions reinforce the story of who you are. Be competent. Be reliable. Deliver excellence when it matters most. A strong reputation once built becomes a shield. It speaks for you when you're silent. It protects you from attacks before they even arrive. Build it intentionally. Protect it relentlessly, and wield it strategically. Finally, the seventh principle. Make excellence your daily discipline. Many men confuse excellence with performance in big moments. They think it's about the dramatic speech, the decisive confrontation, the one glorious opportunity to prove themselves. But that is not where greatness is forged. True excellence is shaped in the smallest, quietest, most invisible moments. It is in how you wake up when you'd rather stay in bed. It's in how you respond to minor frustrations. It's in how you treat people who can do nothing for you. It's in the quality of your work when no one is watching. These invisible acts stack up brick by brick to create the character that determines your destiny. And character is destiny. If you want to be respected, you must practice being respectable in the shadows, not just under the spotlight. Comfort is your greatest enemy. The moment you surrender to comfort, you become predictable. Predictability makes you controllable, and controllability ensures you'll remain invisible in a world that only honors those who stand out. Excellence is not an act. It is a lifestyle. It's the refusal to settle. It's the daily decision to sharpen your skills, strengthen your body, and discipline your mind regardless of who notices. The average man lives by moods. If he feels inspired, he works. If not, he drifts. The man of excellence works whether inspiration is present or absent. He shows up. He refines. He grows. And because of this, he creates results that others cannot replicate. True mastery of life begins when a man recognizes that comfort is a trap. Many live as prisoners of ease, surrendering to short-term pleasure and wondering why greatness never finds them. But those who step into discomfort voluntarily, who willingly put themselves through difficulty to grow stronger, are the ones who eventually rise above everyone else. Niccolò Machiavelli once wrote that fortune favors those who embrace discipline. This wasn't just a statement about hard work, but a profound truth about human strength. When you honor your own commitments and hold yourself to unshakable standards, you develop a power that cannot be taken away. Discipline transforms into freedom. It becomes the very foundation upon which confidence, trust, and influence are built. Every time you refuse to surrender to laziness, you carve another layer of armor around your mind. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, even when no one is watching, you build proof that you can trust yourself absolutely. Confidence is not found in the approval of others. It is forged in the quiet consistency of self-respect. When you establish non-negotiables, principles you will never compromise, you send a signal to the world that you are not a man to be bent by circumstance. This doesn't mean arrogance. It means clarity. The man who knows what he will never tolerate cannot be manipulated by bribes, temptations, or pressure. He has set boundaries so firm that they protect him like fortress walls. Waking early when every part of you craves more sleep. Exercising when your body screams for rest. Doing the difficult task before the easy one. Honoring your word even when it costs you comfort. These are not ordinary habits. They are sacred practices. They are rituals of power. Each repetition strengthens your mental muscle, showing you that feelings are not your master. Other men may sneer and call it extreme, accuse you of being too intense, or insist you're missing out on enjoyment. Yet those same men, years later, will look at the crumbling ruins of their undisciplined choices and wish they had chosen differently. While they sink under the weight of their neglected responsibilities, you will be standing firm, built on a foundation of relentless self-discipline. Excellence is not something you pull out only for special occasions, nor is it reserved for the spotlight when others are watching. True excellence is invisible. It is forged in the smallest moments of your daily life. It is revealed in the way you react to frustration when no one is paying attention, in the way you treat people who cannot offer you anything in return, in the way you persist in finishing tasks when no reward seems near. These are the unseen battles where character is either strengthened or eroded. A man who practices excellence when nobody notices becomes unstoppable when the entire world is watching. Comfort seduces men into mediocrity, whispering that rest and ease are harmless. But comfort breeds weakness. Weakness breeds predictability, and predictability ensures that others will eventually control you. Discipline, however, creates a sharp edge that cuts through mediocrity. It transforms you from someone average into someone exceptional. When you practice discipline long enough, something extraordinary begins to happen. You become unshakable. To be unstoppable does not mean that life suddenly spares you from obstacles. It means obstacles no longer break you. Disappointments no longer derail you. Criticism no longer defines you, and external chaos no longer rattles your internal calm. The unstoppable man is not immune to life's storms. He simply refuses to be swept away by them. He understands that every challenge is expected. Every betrayal is simply proof of human self-interest. Every setback is material for growth. He no longer asks why difficulties happen. Instead, he asks how he can use them to rise higher. This is not about becoming heartless. It is not about cutting off human connection or turning into a cold machine. It is about emotional intelligence at its highest level. You learn to love without dependency, to care without needing constant validation, to give without expecting immediate return. You no longer require anyone's approval to feel secure, nor do you need their permission to pursue your vision. Your strength comes from within, not from applause. Your worth is proven through discipline, not through recognition. This self-reliance doesn't make you lonely. It makes you selective. You choose carefully who gets access to your time, your energy, your emotions. You understand that not everyone deserves a seat at your table, and by controlling access, you protect your empire. Machiavelli once declared that the man who conquers himself is greater than any conqueror of nations. That is because self-mastery eliminates weakness at its root. The man who cannot be bribed with comfort, who cannot be rattled by criticism, who cannot be weakened by disappointment. This man is invincible. And when you become this man, you will notice how others react to you. They will try to test you, to poke holes in your armor, to see if you can be swayed or broken. They will gossip, undermine, or challenge you, hoping to see a crack in your foundation. But when they discover that your walls are impenetrable, that their words cannot reach your center, they will exhaust themselves while you remain unmoved. That is when true respect forms. Not the cheap respect of titles or forced authority, but the deep respect that comes from being undeniably strong. You must realize something essential. Becoming unstoppable is not a final achievement, but a continuous state of being. Every day you are tested. Every day you have the opportunity to either slip back into weakness or reinforce your strength. The man you used to be, the one who explained himself to critics, who begged for respect, who waited for others to validate him, must be buried permanently. He cannot come with you where you're going. The new man you are becoming does not seek permission. He takes ownership. He does not hope for opportunities. He creates them. He does not retreat when resistance appears. He advances through it with calm determination. You have already begun this transformation. The very fact that you are reading these words and absorbing their meaning proves that you are no longer who you were yesterday. You have chosen to awaken. You have chosen to evolve. Your silence has become your weapon. Your disappointments have turned into your fuel. Your reputation is no longer accidental, but strategic. Your excellence is no longer situational, but habitual. You are crossing the threshold into becoming unstoppable. And once you step fully into this state, nothing can hold you back. The world will try to resist your rise. Old habits will whisper in your mind, tempting you to slide back into comfort. People around you will question your new standards, trying to drag you back into mediocrity so they can feel comfortable again. But you must not go back. You must not lower your standards. You must not dilute your strength to make others feel better about their weakness. Stand firm. Hold the line. You have come too far to retreat. Remember, critics are silenced not with arguments, but with undeniable achievement. Doubters are defeated not by words, but by results. Betrayals are not setbacks, but clarifications of who deserves your trust. Comfort is not rest. It is decay. Excellence is not a performance. It is a way of life. And discipline is not punishment. It is liberation. When you embody these truths, you become the man others whisper about in awe. You become the man who changes rooms without speaking. You become the man who shapes circumstances rather than being shaped by them. You become the man whose presence commands attention, whose silence demands respect, whose very existence is proof of what is possible when discipline meets resilience. This is your rebirth. This is your transformation. You are no longer the man who gets overlooked, ignored, or dismissed. You are the man who sets the tone, who commands respect without requesting it, who shapes destiny instead of waiting for fortune. You are no longer breakable. You are no longer bendable. You are no longer stoppable. You are the living embodiment of unstoppable influence. And now the only thing left is for you to step fully into this identity. Do not wait for permission. Do not wait for the perfect moment. Do not wait for someone to hand you what you already have the power to claim. This is your moment. This is your influence. This is your time. Take everything that is yours.